Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another knife review for you. Today we have the Freeman 451. This is a very interesting knife that I've been wanting to get my hands on for just about a year now. I played with one of these at Blade Show. I really wanted to go back to the booth and buy one, and I bought something else instead, and I won't name names, but I made a mistake. I should have gotten one of these instead. It is a very, very unique knife for sure. It does have some love it or hate it looks according to the things I posted on Instagram. I like the way it looks. I'll explain that more. But they are all fully made in the United States, and the prices are pretty reasonable. It's a button lock flipper running on bearings, really smooth action, either aluminum or titanium handles, D2 or S45VN steel. Not a whole lot of companies are using S45VN right now. The only two I know right now in production are Freeman and Spyderco on one sprint run. So yeah, one of the first companies to get their hands on that new steel. Excited to learn more about that as we go on. It's a different version of, just an improved version of S35VN. It's 10 better. It's 10 of something better. But anyway, glad to get my hands on this steel and glad to get my hands on a Freeman. You're looking at $225 for one of the D2 versions. The S45VN ones start at $275. Make sure I have that correct. $285, sorry, $285. And then if you want this carbon fiber insert, they're $300. And then also there's a titanium one that's a bit more expensive and a bit heavier, but it has some cool titanium stuff with their logo milled into it and things. So go check out their site. It's gonna be linked down below for all the different options. Now I will say the looks on this I know are a bit polarizing. People on Instagram already told me all that. They have a very unique blade. They are a CNC machine blade, and they kind of leave the marks in there. The edge is obviously hand sharpened, and we'll get to more about that. And we'll talk more about how this milling affects how the blade performs when we get to the blade part. But I think it looks cool. The thing that people seem to like or not like is the billboarding. Yes, it is loud. I think one of my Instagram commenters said that you could see the blade steel marking from space, which it may be a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, it is pretty big. I think it fits the personality of this knife. This is kind of a bruiser, and it does stand out a lot more on this finish that I chose. This is the two-tone finish. If you get the pure DLC, which most of the Freemans are, this is an option, kind of a no-cost option. I just asked Freeman to do it. I saw it on one of the titanium ones, and he said no problem. That's a nice thing about dealing with a one-man place is I ordered the knife, and I could call, and I just emailed him and said, hey, can I get that two-tone? He said, yeah, sure. So I got the two-tone blade, and this pocket clip is not coated. It's just regular raw metal. So that's nice. It's nice to be able to do that. But some people hate the looks of it. I really do, especially fitting the personality of this knife. It does come with a lanyard on it. This is the lanyard. It's nice. You don't have to cut it off. I was just able to take it off. It did make it past the photos. You guys know I don't like lanyards. It did make it past the photos. Did not make it much longer than that. I like lanyards. This is a very nice stock thing to come with. It's easy to remove, so I'm not going to complain about it. And the lanyard hole is not obtrusive or anything, so I have no complaints. But just to let you know, it does come with a lanyard. I don't like them, so that came off. Too sweet, as one would say. But yeah, very, very solid construction. The quality on it is just fantastic. I will say I took this apart and put it back together, and man, it could not be easier. If you go into the full titanium versions, you don't have these 3 extra screws. That's just to hold in the insert. The insert comes out separately. You don't actually have to remove those 3 screws to take it apart, which I learned. I removed them anyway, and then I realized I didn't need to do that. But I think one of the best ways you can judge how well a knife is put together is how well it goes back together after you take it apart. And this could not have been simpler. It basically just dropped back together, clink, like almost with that noise and everything, just tink, and everything was back together. And it was really nice. A tiny little thing, and I didn't do a disassembly on this, but a tiny little thing that I think was amazing that I do want to bring up. So these are aluminum handles, and it runs on bearings. So the bearings run on some stainless steel washers to protect the aluminum, because obviously the bearings would eat through the aluminum in fairly short order. And those washers were the most high-polished washers I've ever seen in a production knife. And it just makes the action so smooth. You'll see that when we get to the flipping action. Everybody complains because I don't do it soon enough, so I'll do it early on. But yeah, it's a complete just drop shut, fall shut, amazing thing. And there are a lot of really awesome little attention to detail things on this knife that truly impress me. Things I didn't notice at Blade Show when I just flipped it around standing at a booth. I just thought the action was really good. But the more I play with it, the more impressed I am. The blade's pretty unique. We'll get to that. But let's do some specs and size comparisons before we go too much farther. This is a large knife. You have an overall length of 8.8 inches, a blade length of 3.7 inches, a blade thickness of 0.156 inches, handle thickness of 0.6 inches, and a weight of 5.23 ounces. So really not that bad for such a big bruisery knife. Now let's do some size comparisons. We're not even going to bother bringing out the small stuff like I usually do. We'll just go. This is your Benchmade full-size Griptilian. Your Spyderco Para 2, PM2, sorry. Move them up so they're all in the frame there. So you can see it's a little bit bigger than both of those. Not hugely so, but a little bit. And we'll move the PM2 out of the way for just a moment and bring in the Rat Model 1. Pretty similar in overall length, but obviously a bit beefier than a Model 1. And then bring in a couple of bit bruisier kind of knives. We will start out with the Cold Steel 8010. So you can see, yeah, it's kind of in that same sort of carry category as an 8010 is sort of where I would put it. And the Recon 1. A little bit smaller than a Recon 1. And lastly, bring in another American-made knife. We have the Hinderer XM18. So just a little bit bigger than the XM18. Now we're going to get to the part of the review where I talk about individual things, and I always start out with the blade because that is the most important part of a knife. Obviously, they're meant to cut things. Now, yes, this is very unique. A lot of people say, why do they do that? Well, they're not the first company by any means to have a grooved blade like this. Kershaw actually did a model called the Groove. You know, they had a grooved blade. It does have some advantages. I did find cutting through cardboard for how thick this blade is and how thick it is behind the edge, which we'll get to in a moment. It did seem to bind up less on like cardboard and stuff. Like, I think you're sawing back and forth on it. It does seem to bind up just a little bit less than a full flat grind. I was comparing it actually to the 8010, and the 8010 has similar blade stock thickness, and but it's a flat grind, and it did bind up just a bit less. This is thinner behind the edge, but it did seem to just bind up a bit less if you're sawing back and forth on a really long cardboard cut. But Freeman said it is partly for looks. And that's fine. That's fine. It is, and it's on the CNC machine. It saves some time, and it's partly for looks. So, but I did find that it did have a slight advantage on long cardboard cuts. And I guess if you're cutting something really sticky, I could see where this might have some advantage. It does make the blade pretty thick behind the edge. Okay, very thick behind the edge. It's really hard to even figure out where to measure it on this, but I'm going to take an average, and it's about 45 thousandths behind the edge, which is a lot. Not going to deny that. But mitigating that a little bit is that this is screaming sharp out of the box, and just look at how beautiful the edge is on it. It's a really good mirror polished edge. It's screaming sharp. It'll still do all your, cut paper and all that stuff that we all want to see things do, because it's still very, very sharp. No problems there whatsoever. It'll still slice things. It's obviously not a slicing machine. This is meant to be kind of a bruiser user, harder core kind of knife. I really don't have a problem with it, even with the thickness behind the edge. It's not like a big giant thing to me. Would I like to see a thinner blade stock and thinner behind the edge? Yes, of course I will, because my sort of EDC task, that's what I look for. But it's not the end of the world to me. It's going to be one of those love it or hate it kind of things. And I'll just leave it at that. It is S45VN. I have not had it enough to really talk about the heat treat. This is the first S45VN knife I've ever had. I have another one coming. And I'll be able to learn a bit more about that steel, but it is supposed to be a little better than S45VN. And for the pricing, I think it's great. Overall, this is a really good value knife. Ergonomics are excellent. Really, really good. This is one thing that struck me, I remember at Blade Show, because it doesn't look like it would be amazing ergonomically, but it is really good. I really like this version with the inlay, so you got a bit more grip on it. The titanium ones don't have as much grip. It's not the end of the world. You're locked into this thing pretty good, but it's worth mentioning. And like I said, the titanium ones are just a little bit heavier. But I find the ergos very good. This jimping looks really extreme, but it really isn't. It's well-rounded enough that it doesn't tear your finger up or anything. We're using the flipper tab. Pocket clip is perfectly placed, completely disappears in your hand. No hot spots at all. Ergonomically, it's really good. This does feel like a knife that you're meant to put in your hand and just work with all freaking day. And now, carry-wise, it's fine. It's not amazing. It's not meant to be a complete, to disappear in your pocket. It is a working knife, but the pocket clip tension's pretty good. You're running on aluminum there or smooth titanium, one or the other, so it slides in and out good. It's definitely not deep carry at all. It does stick out a fair bit. But again, I give knives like this a pass when they're meant to be big kind of user sort of knives and workaday knives. It is nice to have a bit out to grab hold of, especially if you're wearing gloves. I think a lot of people using this knife will be wearing gloves, so I give it a pass there. Flipper tab sticks out a little bit in your pocket, but it's not egregious. And there's no like sharp jimping or anything to catch your finger on, so that's not a problem. So yeah, it carries fine for what it is. It's not going to disappear in your pocket, but it carries absolutely fine for what it is. Now the action on this thing is much better than fine. Flipper tab, you cannot shake it out. The D10 is perfect for that. Flicks right out, no problem at all. And this is just addicting. It is so smooth. No need for any wrist flick whatsoever. It just drops. I will say it has a very tiny amount of button stick, not enough that you have to put any more pressure on it, just enough that it makes a click. Yeah, I'm not putting any extra pressure. I don't feel like it's a big deal. You just get that tiny little bit of click. I did tear it apart and put it back together, and it didn't get any better, but it's breaking in, and it's getting less and less. I think once you put some miles on one of these, that would pretty much go away. There is no complete deployment hole, but it does have indentation. You can spidey flick it, you can thumb flick it, all those things, but it's just so smooth, and it makes a very satisfying sound. Yeah, the action on these is outstanding, and this big old heavy blade, it just drops like nobody's business. So what are my conclusions on this? It is very unique. It's absolutely a very unique knife. When I walked by the booth probably 3 times at Blade Show before I stopped. But once I did and I got it in my hand, I really liked it. And as I said at the front, I wish I'd have gotten one earlier. It's just cool. It's just undeniably cool. You may hate the billboarding. Like I said, on this knife, it doesn't really bother me. I don't hate billboarding universally. It's I kind of go by the knife. Some billboarding looks good, some billboarding looks bad. I think this completely fits the view of the knife. And again, like I said, if you get this in all blacked out, you don't even see it that much. So because it doesn't come in like a different color, it's just everything's all blacked out. And that's the most common one you're going to see are the completely blacked out versions. But it doesn't bother me. The quality on the build is outstanding. Jeff there, great guy to deal with. It seems like it's pretty much a one-man shop. I don't know how many people are there, but he's Jeff Freeman, great guy to deal with. And I think he's making a very cool, unique product. And for 100% made in the USA with a steel that hardly anybody else is using, and with this level of build quality, I have to say this thing's kind of a bargain, even at $300 with some options. And the titanium ones aren't that much more. I don't have the price in front of me, so I don't want to quote it and be wrong, but the titanium versions aren't that much more. And I think it's a bargain. It's $225 with D2. They use US D2, so it's good steel as well. If you want to save even more, $225 for one of these in D2. You can get all the same options and everything on the handle. Yeah, that ain't bad. The blade is unique. The blade is unique, and that's going to be something that either works for you or doesn't. But the rest of it is a huge bargain. And the blade does work for me. It'll still cut stuff. It's still, and I kind of like the look of it, But that's all up to you. That is a subjective thing. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Go, if you get your chance to get your hands on one of these, check them out. They are really cool in person. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Brian. Have a good one.